Hi everyone, and welcome to Session 1 of the Introduction to Songwriting and Composition course. Today we're going to be looking at the creative process as a whole in songwriting and talking about some of the philosophies and techniques in more of a general way. And as we go on through the weeks progress, we will be looking at a book called The Craft and Business of Songwriting by John Brainey, and really following it for the most part fairly strictly within a few of the chapters within the syllabus, especially the sections on lyrics and song form and also the writing process, because there are some good helpful tips and kind of grounding within chord structures and keys that might be helpful to you and also to keep us on course. But this first lesson will really be more open-ended and talking about some of my own personal philosophies on songwriting and composing in general. So one of the first things to do, of course, is within each of these weekly videos is as you're watching the video, make any notes, write down any notes that you have of questions, and we'll discuss them in the webinar. Pretty much the goal of this course is to introduce you. Several of you may have a bit of experience with songwriting, and some of you may have none at all. And the course is designed to be more introductory, but we can also talk about more advanced issues perhaps during the webinar. The fundamental question is, what is songwriting and how do you do it? Well, songwriting, as I see it, it's a creative process whereby we're taking melody, crafting melody in tandem with lyrics to present something that conveys a message that is really quite powerful, because you've got the dynamics of music and text. So how do we do songwriting? Well, it comes down to first, I mean this will be variable depending on what your individual philosophy is. Again, I'm going to be presenting my own, but for the majority of the time, I'm usually more melody based. So I will work on a melody, and sometimes I'll have actually lyrics with that melody that I will write down or record. And this is something that I want to interject real quick and say, one of the most important things you can do as a songwriter is have a means of capturing your ideas. I recommend either a handheld voice recorder, or you can use your smartphone, any of the microphone apps to record. That really is essential. Why? Because you're able to capture your phrasing, your ideas in the moment. Because if you don't have a means to record, particular idea can just be lost. Whereas if you're able to capture it via your voice recorder, you're able to listen to it, think of more ideas, and use it as a springboard to then craft the material even more. So very important. Each week as you guys are doing the assignments, or even when you're not doing assignments, have a device with you at all times where you're able to record any ideas that might pop into your head, or any kind of just anything that triggers melody, tune, or even lyric that you're able to go back. The other thing that can be important too is keep a notebook. Keep a notebook where you're able to write down lyrics and passages from the Bible that really stick out to you, and that way you're able to capture on the page something that's inspired you. Again, this whole songwriting thing, as I see it, it's a creative process that a lot of the time is driven by inspiration. Inspiration, though, is not the only leading thing. You learn as you go along to be able to almost get yourself in a vein of inspiration. So you may not have any ideas at all in writing a song, and you begin to mess around, improvise a little bit, and you'll find yourself then being able to provoke ideas that then will launch you into something then that perhaps you could be inspired then to create. And again, there's two principal philosophies covered by Brainy in this book, which you'll read for this next week. And one of them is the philosophy of the inspiration-driven composer or songwriter, and then the craft-driven. Craft-driven meaning that professionals who have deadlines and they may not be driven by inspiration, not necessarily driven by inspiration, but they're able and familiar with the formulas of structure to then produce something, a piece of art based on rules and techniques. So I tend to be more of a fan of the inspiration, and I hope that through this course I'll be able to inspire you guys to not only write better songs for those of you who are writing songs and those who are not, to be able to write songs. And again, looking at the syllabus, pretty much the biggest requirement as we go towards the final is you will write a song and present it at the end. During our weekly webinars, we'll discuss and work on melody assignments, lyric and melody assignments, so on and so forth. Now you get the personal feedback from someone, which is really invaluable, to get feedback and help as you're growing in this process. So, as kind of introductory, I want to begin to talk about melody a little bit. In one of the subsequent lessons, we'll really dive into briefly brushing up on some of the theory a little bit, but theory isn't really the heart of this course. It's more about craftsmanship, and that's something you can do by ear with not a lot of theory training. The theory definitely helps, especially when needing to wanting to get fancy and modulate to another key or borrow a chord from another key. Anyway, so I just want to play a little example about melody that can be very simple but yet powerful in simplicity. Let's see if you recognize this tune. I'm just going to play the melody and then I'll sing it for you. Minor improvisational note there, accidental. But anyway, do you know what that tune is? I'll play it one more time, this time without any mistakes. Can you name it? What's going on here first before I reveal the identity of this tune? We're just having a sequence, a simple melodic sequence. C, E, D, D, F, E, E, G, F, D, F, E, D, C. It's just a sequence that's ascending. This is part of the song called God is So Good. It's like, the lyric goes like this. God is so good, God is so good, God is so good, He's so good to me. Quite a catchy little lyric, but at the same time so simple. And of course there's a lot more to that song. But I use this example as a way to segue into this idea of simplicity, but almost the inherent, perhaps, power of something that when it's simple, it's easy to be catched and grabbed and able to really convey to the listener easily. So one of my philosophies starting off here is, especially in sacred music or worship music that we do, is one, thinking about what is the message of the text? What is it you're trying to convey? Secondly, how are you going to convey that? By what means? Is it going to be something that's difficult to follow? How do you lead people along? And so in asking that question, I tend to favor the idea of simplicity of lyric, keeping it fairly simple to follow. There is, of course, times that are appropriate for more dense lyrics, but in general I like to keep the verses relatively short, and then the chorus be something anthemic that then conveys the heart of the message. Again, I had said, what is the message? What is the journey you're trying to lead people along with or convey? And when we, again, this is variable, but for the most part, as a generalization, in a song you'll have a verse, sometimes, always a chorus, and then sometimes a bridge, and could be a second chorus, but usually it's fairly straightforward and a fair generalization to say you usually have a verse, chorus, second verse, chorus. That's pretty straightforward and can be seen over quite a lot of music. So, something to think about when you're structuring verses and chorus is how does the verse lead to the chorus, and how is the chorus highlighting the message? Again, I'm kind of speaking a little vaguely because we're not covering direct material, but believe me, we'll have plenty of examples as we go along with the chorus. Another thing I want to talk about briefly in this introductory lesson is the idea of melody and how we generated that. For me, it's the majority of the time improvisatory. So what does that mean? So that means I just begin to, sit around and play. Until all of a sudden I'll find a particular catchy melody or something that kind of sticks with me, or sometimes not. I'll record some stuff and then come back to it, or sometimes when I'm playing, I say, oh, there's something there, and then I'll record it and then work out the ideas. To interject for a moment, one of the things, and I may say this quite a bit over the course, is this idea of letting an idea incubate. So I may think that I have just sat down for the past hour or whatever the space of time is and just written this best song, amazing song, or just happy that I wrote something, I think I might have something there. I always I always record it, come back a day later or even maybe 2 days later, and then get back into it, listen to it, kind of then be in critique mode to see, what's good about the song, what's not. I also want to say this though, while you're writing a song, really I would encourage you to be really free and open and just spontaneous, and allow yourself to record a lot of ideas and really work in quite a few different lyrics or melodies, and see what is kind of conjured up through that. I would really not put any limits on yourself when you're approaching the material. The critique time and the time to shape stuff is, at least as I see it, after the fact. Because then you can go back and listen and see, what parts do I like, what parts do I not like. So with that, I would also like to kind of segue a bit and talk about material. Of course, I think that pretty much for anyone involved in worship, the Psalms are some of the best musical material. And so being able to take lyrics and then set them to melody is something that's not only a great thing to do for your own personal edification, but then also as those of you who are aspiring worship leaders or are worship leaders now and you're trying to write your own songs. A lot of this is going to be really individual, and what you find works for you. Again, I am by no means proposing that my way is the only way of writing, or even the best way. It's just one way that possibly can open up the door to you finding your own methods and means for getting really good and quick at writing songs and creating as effectively and efficiently as possible. So, let me see here. So I may just grab the guitar as I'm in the guitarist and just show something that might be helpful. So I may have just grabbed the guitar and said, okay, I'm going to record this idea. And say, okay, that's going to be a basic line that I'm going to shape. So I've got a melody, and then, you know, I might begin to hum something like da 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 da. So one of the things I would first do is record that right there. And then in recording that, I have really a principal melody that I can come back to. During this creative process, I may not know exactly what it is, where it fits. This could be part of the verse, or it could be part of the chorus. Da 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 da. If I don't immediately have lyrics for it, I'll just, you know, kind of scat sing. It's not really scat sing, but just, you know, humming along with it. Da 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 da. Then I'll record it using my smartphone, and you know, I may listen to it back and be like, oh, I actually have some ideas. Or remember what I was talking about earlier was the idea of a notebook. With a notebook, I may have some stuff that during my devotional time would really stood out to me, and I might have lyrics right there that said something like, "You are faithful and ever true," or something like that. And then I could just take that and come over here and see how it would work. You are faithful and always true. You are faithful and always true. And so then I might say, oh, that sounded like the beginning of a chorus. Or, again, you don't have to make these decisions right away, but you could note that, write it down in your notebook, you know, put it next to that, oh, chorus idea, or whatever method you want to notate or annotate to refer you to the beginnings of an idea. So this is really what I'm referring to as a melody-driven process. This is, of course, starting with the melody and then adding lyrics. Lyrics that then you might already have in a notebook from ideas that you've begun to think about, or you have a melody and you open the Bible, the Psalms, and something sticks out at you there, and you're able to work with that and really meditate on that. There are, of course, then other ways where you might have lyrics first, and the idea of, you know, you're walking around doing something, all of a sudden you start either hearing something or in your head, or you start singing something. Well, what I would recommend, immediately record that idea. Like, if I'll use the same melody because I've got that in my head now. I've been playing it, right? So say I'm walking around and all of a sudden I'm like da 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 da. I would immediately, in my case, an iPhone, immediately grab my phone and fire up my app and go da 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 da, and then I may, you know, develop from there. One of the things you can do if you just have your voice and no instrument at all is you can just almost improvise vocally. So if I just start going like this, da 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 da. Dun dun na 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 dun 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 dun. Hopefully this is helpful, but I'm trying to demonstrate some ideas for you. What I'm doing there is using just what I have at the moment, or at least what I'm pretending to have at the moment, just being my voice, and generating ideas that I'm recording through that I can take my device and sort through later about what was, you know, catchy or something that I really felt a connection with and as part of the creative process. And again, I cannot emphasize enough that this creative process is both really, for the sake of an analogy, it's like architecture. It's designing a building, or reference an art metaphor, painting a painting, and you have all your colors and just a blank canvas, and you work with it over time, kind of bringing out what is on the page yet to be seen. So it's this idea of craftsmanship, and that again, it's a process that takes time, it takes dedication. More times than not, I would say, especially in the more composition side, it's not that all of a sudden I have the most amazing idea pop into my head and immediately write it down, although that does happen sometimes, but rare. But usually it's more applying yourself to playing your instrument, whatever that primary one is, and playing it, maybe stumbling across an idea as we were just creating in the moment, this, that then I'm able to springboard off of as my starting place, and go from there. So I'm really looking forward to interacting with each of you during the weeks and sessions that we have, to not only get your questions and concerns, but then, you know, being able to help you guys in your process and see what is really helpful from these videos and what you want to spend more time covering. The other thing is, so we've talked about a little bit, brushing up a little bit on melody-driven process, the idea of, you know, you could be driving in your car, walking down the road, all of a sudden you start improvising vocally with a tune or that you just created in the moment. Another thing you can have is more of a chord-driven process. So in this case, I'm just going to use a guitar because I have it here. So in more of a chord-driven approach to songwriting, you may say to yourself, well, you know, I'm not very good with creating melody at this point. I don't really know how to do that. One, I would encourage you, keep trying at it. The more you do it, the better you get. The idea of practice makes better, absolutely, is fundamental and key to what we're doing. The more you write, the more you attempt to write, the better you're going to be at it, and more skilled and sharpened up. So in the chord-driven approach, you may just be playing a couple chords. In this case, I'm playing G. I'm just going to stick to probably 3 really basic chords: G major, D major, and C. So in this approach, you may be, again, just begin to play. So then, for some reason, you might say, okay, I like this idea, I like this, where this is going. So you would go ahead and hit your record button. And then, again, you might begin to hum something. And you might have some idea for lyrics, or again, have a notebook or something, and just say, okay, I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Him. No turning back. No turning back. Again, there I'm referencing, I have decided to follow Jesus. But you can have different sources kind of inspiration. There's a lot of times where I'll use old hymns as the basis for an idea of a new song to bring it into more of a contemporary context. And that's in no way to diminish some of the old hymns, because they're great and I love to sing quite a bit of them. But in your own songwriting, if you're trying to generate something that you feel you could bring in more a contemporary context, or even make more personable to you as a writer, is using old hymns to kind of have a lyric base from. So again, in this process, I would just begin to record the stuff that I'm doing without really thinking too critically about anything, and just allowing kind of inspiration to guide you, if you will. Or you may have a passage like from James or something, every good gift, every perfect gift comes from the Father of lights. So you could set then that like this. One potential idea as I'm beginning this process. Every good gift, every perfect gift you give. Every good gift, every perfect gift you give. Every good gift, every perfect gift you give to me, Lord, to me. So again, this is just an example of something I could be working with an idea. Again, having a notebook or using your computer would be really important not only to keep track of the songs you're writing, but then you can go back and look at material that you maybe started on, had a half hour here to work on something, and you're able to come back later, fire up your smartphone, see what the tune and melody was, and then see what fresh material you can add to it. So again, this is a basic kind of guide to what I would do from a chord-driven technique of lyrics. Another thing in talking about chords is, some of you may not know a lot of chords on the guitar or the piano, and I would encourage you to, get a book, get a guitar, if you're a guitarist, get a guitar book that has like picture chords, and begin to play around with some chords that you don't know, because you may, in playing something that's unfamiliar, you may be, oh, that's really cool. You might find a chord that you think, oh, that's unique, or you find inspiring because you haven't heard it, so it's even more the wow factor of something fresh and new. And then you're doing kind of a double duty, in the sense that you're learning a new chord by playing it and incorporating it into a song. But the another kind of philosophy thing is the importance of not writing a song just to write a song. I think is really important. You can do it as an exercise, but especially when we're talking about worship music and Christian music. I mean, I think my philosophy is it's the highest form and of music that exists, and therefore should be treated with the utmost really respect and dedication, and trying to develop the materials as much as possible, because one, for the most part, you're communicating the gospel or parts of the gospel, and that is definitely something not to be taken lightly. For those of you who aren't, taking this course to do worship music, there is, of course, you writing your own songs about experience, and that's fine too. We'll talk a bit about that, of approaches. You may just be writing songs about an event in your life that was really special, and that's all good too. Stuff that is meaningful to you is really important. The thing, in my view, the thing that's most important to me is, of course, what God has done for me in my life, and His miracles, and of course His Word, and His salvation, the salvation message of the gospel, and its power and significance in my life. And so that's what really drives me as a songwriter, just to not only develop all that I can be in that, but also striving for really top-notch melody, well-crafted lyrics. So we will get into, again, some technical stuff. We'll talk about range and tessitura, and I'll go ahead and briefly mention now, since this is our first lesson, that's kind of getting us focused and kind of starting them from a wide variety of ideas, and as we go along, focusing in on particular sections, like one section being devoted to melody, one devoted to keys and chords that we can use for writing songs, and then one actually lyrics and tunesmithing, stuff like that. But one of the things that's important to mention in a songwriter, being a songwriter, especially if you're writing stuff that you're going to sing, is knowing what your vocal range is. What can you sing? Knowing where that fits, either on the piano, if it's F to F. So if you're a male, knowing whether you're a bass, baritone, or tenor, or somewhere in between those, what your specific range is. That way you know keys that are good for you, and that way you don't end up writing a song that's in a key that you can't sing, unless your purpose is to write a song that someone else sings, and that you can kind of sing, I guess. But again, I am taking the approach that you all are writing your own songs that then you're going to sing, at least for right now. And I think that's a pretty fair assumption. So range is important, knowing how high you can go, how low you can go, and what keys fit good. Maybe the key of C is good for you. Maybe the key of B flat or F or A major. Knowing those kind of things are great. Again, as an more of an introductory idea, with the guitar we have capos that we can adjust the key of songs, which is really nifty. Pianists, it's not as easy as that. You have to then think about, of course, key signatures. What key am I in? How many sharps? How many flats? Or maybe you don't think of it that way. Maybe you just go by ear and are able to find the pattern. Maybe a more pattern-driven approach. So really, to re-emphasize the point of creativity and inspiration, this introductory video, some takeaways is really be open to allowing yourself to free flow, if you will. You know, having some time where you sit down, you make up a melody. Then you record it, and then you can add the lyrics and stuff. But again, making the point that don't in any ways, by any means, dampen the creative process. That may be, different for you what that process looks like than for me, but fundamentally we're going to have some intersections there where, as a guitarist, I may, kind of doodle around with some melodies. Or if you're a pianist, the same thing. But the important thing is not to really be in critique mode of, oh, is this good? Is this going to work? Or the mode of pressure of, oh, I have to write a song. Really, it should be something that you more approach as in really having the mindset of just allowing yourself to be free. So really in this first lesson, I want to challenge you guys to identify what inspires you to create and how you do that. What is the best instrument for you? If you're a pianist and you find that the guitar is actually easier for you to create on because you're less familiar with it, perhaps, that you don't think about, oh, I've got to play these chords because it goes like this in this key, or maybe not. Maybe you're a pianist and you feel the most empowered and skillful to compose on the piano. Just some ideas to think about what is that means by which you can be most creative. Identify what instrument it is, and again, as a little tangent, I find, I may write tons of stuff on the guitar, and I may sit down with the guitar one day and be like, oh, I'm not really, I'm having a little more difficulty generating ideas. If I jump to some other instrument like the piano or something else, I may be more inclined to find something that works. Maybe it's a function of timbre of the instrument, something that I'm not as familiar with that day, or something that then provokes your creative process. Whatever it is for you that can help enable you to be inspired in the creative process. And again, I want to emphasize you're not always going to be inspired by just being downloaded with all sorts of wonderful ideas. I believe it was Thomas Edison said, of course Thomas Edison invented electricity and a lot of other wonderful inventions. He said I believe the quote is 90% perspiration, 10% inspiration. So just speaking to the idea of the time at task and the work. It's going to be work, but it's going to be work that pays off for this piece of music, for this song that you're working on. So again, finding what works for you. One of your first assignments that we'll discuss here is you're going to be asked to write a melody. Now I'm really open. It can be as long as you want, or even as short as you want. Hopefully it's longer than 10 seconds or something, but something that you are able to create and craft over this next week that stands out to you, that could be almost like a hook. A hook is something we refer to as something that's catchy, like a catchphrase in English or something would be kind of an analogy for it. Something that you find catchy. I'll have each of you play them. We'll talk about them. We'll talk about what you think makes it catchy, and I will give you my input on maybe what we can do to make it better, or maybe just add to a little bit. Now again, my hope is that each of these exercises will help you lead up to your final song. So really take them seriously, and I encourage you to do so, because you may end up finding something that you find really inspiring that then you can use to write your final project. Or just be able to sort through material that by doing this process gets better and better, or material that you like more and more and become more fond of by working out different melodies and finding ones that are more desirable perhaps than others. Again, there'll be your individual tastes, but I'll help sort through, with my background and knowledge, what I would find helpful in crafting that. Again, we're going to have whole lessons devoted to crafting lyrics and melody, because this is something that is actually quite deep and quite there's quite a lot to it. It's really a lifetime endeavor, I think. But just starting somewhere is always important. So you may be able to play a 3-note melody right now, but work with what you have and watch as we continue these lessons. You're going to find if you put in the time, you'll be leaps and bounds from where you started from. Guaranteed. If you put in the time, it will be none of it wasted. It will be very helpful for you as a songwriter. One of the things I want to talk about as we're wrapping up this first lesson is the importance of diligence and dedication. Allotting time each day to playing your instrument or practicing, or at least every other day. The Psalms really encourages us, actually commands us to play skillfully, and it's important to have, in my view, God's people should be the most talented, most skilled songwriters, most skilled virtuosos of their instruments. So I think it important really to be hands-on and devoted to having something not just be mediocre, but as good as it can be, with the spirit of excellence. So that just as you're spending time each week preparing this stuff, have that in mind. Have the goal of, okay, I'm going to use this course to see myself excel and grow in not only the area of songwriting and doing it excellent and skillfully, but watching that transfer over into other areas. So the first assignment you have is to write a melody. So I want to briefly go over again one of the possible approaches to that. You may be a pianist or something. You can just start with a simple melody line that you created. Say I come up here and I want to create something in D major. I may not know that it's D major, but I just begin to play something. And I might say, oh, okay, that's going somewhere. So this might be part two. The first part being. And then part two might be. So in recording those two, you have two sections that you can begin to work with. And then maybe figuring out where it goes from there. But that's at least an example of something you could do. Like if next week I could turn this in as my melody. Hopefully you're going to spend more time with it than that, right? So I would recommend that took 2 minutes, maybe even less. So I would encourage you, find a tune or make up a couple tunes, pick your favorite one that you say, oh, I really like this one. Spend some time with it, record it, come back the next day, see if you still really like it, or if you have more ideas that you can play with. With this assignment, you can take it as far as you want, and the farther you take it, the happier I am with that. So it could be 4 parts that you find in A, B, C, or they could be really long motifs or short motifs. So actually I should probably cover what a motif is. So motif is just an idea that we have, like if I say this, if I play this, we can call that our first motif. We can call it motif 1, motif A, motif whatever you want. Motif red. And again, you can take this exercise and begin to add lyrics if you like to, or if some come, that'd be amazing. But if it doesn't happen, start with the melody. So that'd be part 1. And if I have down, 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 down. So you can see just in the time that I've spent demonstrating this idea of a process, or at least a process I would recommend you use, is that it's already something's beginning to take shape and form, and I'm beginning to see something. So I would record this entire thing. I may only use the last 30 seconds of what I recorded, but at least I have the whole thing on record that I can access playback for ideas that I use either now or the future. So again, keeping a catalog and library I find essential to this process, to this creative process as a whole. So another example of this first melody that we begin to create, I can do is, as I've got part 2, and that's my melody, I can begin to have lyrics for it like, you reign, you reign, you reign, Lord, you reign over all the earth, you reign over all things, you reign. It's taking this simple approach of taking a melody. I'm not adding any other triadic notes here, right? No triads. I'm doubling the octave right now to really highlight that melody. But I'm getting a little more support because I'm playing in the low end. So again, I'd encourage you, start simply and grow it out from there. So that was my part 1, and then part 2 we had which then I added just simple lyrics to. You reign over all. You reign, but you reign. You reign forever, Lord. Oh, you reign. And again, you can add, a lot more onto that. You might add just a little bit, but you have an idea started. right? And with that idea started, it germinates to grow into a flourishing flower or whatever your favorite plant is. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this first lesson and that it was helpful, and we'll continue on getting more and more focused and in our webinars, interacting individually with what your needs and concerns are. Alright guys, see you next week.